Ladies and gentlemen, I must begin with a question that cuts deeper than most dare to ask. What if tomorrow never comes? What if the moment you have right now is the last chance you will ever have to change your life, to set things right, to turn back before the door closes forever? Time is one of the most precious and mysterious gifts given to humanity, yet it is also the most often taken for granted. Every heartbeat, every breath, every sunrise is a reminder that life is not infinite on this side of eternity. The reality is that time is urgent and limited, and the tragedy of many lives is not that they lacked opportunity, but that they assumed opportunity would always be waiting for them tomorrow. The truth is tomorrow is never promised, and to live as though it is guaranteed is to walk in a dangerous illusion. People often plan as if they control the years ahead, while ignoring the fact that even the next hour is uncertain. This reality is not meant to paralyze us with fear, but to awaken us to the seriousness of the choices we make in the moments we are given. Think about how easily we let time slip away in distractions, procrastination, or pursuing things that ultimately carry no eternal value. We convince ourselves that we will change later, that we will pursue our calling later, that we will live differently when the timing feels more comfortable. But later is the lie that steals life. Later is the thief that convinces us we have more of what we do not know we have. Life is compared in Scripture to a vapor, a mist that appears for a moment and then vanishes. If we truly grasp the brevity of our existence, we would not waste so much of it on what does not matter. Every second wasted on fear, regret, bitterness, or compromise is a second that can never be recovered. The urgency of time is not only about the shortness of human life, but also about the hour in which we live as a generation. History is moving swiftly, and we are witnessing events that shake nations, topple systems, and change the world in ways no one imagined even a decade ago. These are not signs to ignore. They are reminders that time is pressing, that the window of opportunity to choose rightly and to stand firmly is narrowing. We are not given endless chances to respond to the truth. Every warning, every wake-up call, every moment of grace is an opportunity, but not one that is guaranteed to repeat itself. There comes a point when doors close, when opportunities pass, when what was possible yesterday is no longer within reach. That is why the urgency of time cannot be overstated. Consider the stories of those who look back with regret, realizing too late that the hours they wasted could never be regained. People nearing the end of their days rarely speak of wishing they had earned more money or spent more time in trivial pursuits. They often lament not reconciling with loved ones, not living courageously, not pursuing the higher purpose they always felt deep inside. These regrets are the fruit of ignoring the urgency of time. When people live as though life will last forever, they put off the most important decisions, assuming there will be a better time later. Yet the truth is that the best time to act is always now. Time is a gift, but it is also a test. How we use it reveals what we value. If we value comfort, we will waste it. If we value purpose, we will seize it. Every day is like a treasure chest placed into our hands, but unlike gold or silver, once the day is gone, it cannot be replaced. The measure of our lives will not be in how much time we had, but in how we used the limited time that was given. To live with the awareness of urgency is to live intentionally, to understand that every word spoken, every action taken, every decision made carries weight beyond the moment. This is not a call to panic, but a call to awaken, to realize that the door of time is closing faster than we think. The wise do not wait for a perfect day to live fully. They recognize that today is the only day promised, and that to delay is to gamble with what can never be regained. The world around us is not shaking without cause, nor are the storms, crises, and upheavals we see random accidents of history. There is a purpose behind the shaking, and it is not hidden from those who have the eyes to see. When nations are unsettled, when economies falter, when systems that once seemed immovable begin to crumble, it is not merely the result of human failure or circumstance. It is a divine warning and a wake-up call to remind humanity that nothing built on unstable ground can stand forever. The shaking of the world is meant to strip away illusions and force people to face truths they would otherwise ignore. When everything feels secure, when life flows smoothly, it is easy for people to grow complacent, trusting in their wealth, governments, or their own strength. But when the ground beneath their feet trembles, when the things they once relied on begin to collapse, they are confronted with the reality that these things were never as solid as they appeared. The shaking exposes what is fragile and reveals where true foundations lie. This is why the world is shaking for a reason. It is meant to awaken us from slumber, to call us back to what is unshakable, to drive us out of false securities and into the arms of truth. Throughout history, moments of great shaking have always preceded moments of great decision. Empires rise and fall, economies boom and collapse, societies flourish, and then unravel, and through it all humanity is reminded that the systems of man are temporary, fleeting, and fragile. The shaking we see in our generation is part of this pattern, but it also carries an urgency greater than many others before it. Our world is more connected than ever, which means the impact of crisis spreads faster, deeper, and wider than in previous centuries. What happens in one nation quickly ripples across the globe. The shaking of the world is meant to remind us that we are not in control as much as we like to believe, and that the hope of humanity cannot rest in political leaders, financial stability, or human inventions. The shaking is also an act of mercy, though it may not feel like it. Without the shaking, many would remain asleep, lulled into a false peace that keeps them blind to the truth. The discomfort of the shaking is meant to break through the walls of pride, distraction, and denial. It forces people to confront the questions they avoid when life feels easy. Why am I here? What truly matters? Where is my foundation? If the shaking awakens even a few to those questions, then it has fulfilled a purpose greater than comfort ever could. It is also important to see that the shaking is not only global but personal. The storms of life, loss, disappointment, failure, conflict are allowed for a reason. They strip away the excess, the masks, and the illusions, revealing who we really are and what we truly stand upon. Just as an earthquake tests the strength of buildings, so the shakings of life test the strength of hearts. Those built on shallow foundations crumble, while those anchored in what is eternal remain standing. In this way, the shaking becomes not a curse, but an invitation to rebuild on a foundation that cannot be moved. When people ask why the world feels as though it is unraveling, the answer is clear: it is unraveling because the temporary must fall apart before the eternal can be revealed. The shaking is not a meaningless accident, it is a summons to turn from what cannot last to what will endure. It is a reminder that time is short, that choices cannot be delayed forever, and that neutrality in the face of truth is no longer possible. The world is shaking for a reason, and the reason is that a decision must be made. Each person is being called to decide whether they will cling to the things that collapse or place their trust in the one who remains unshaken. The shaking, painful though it may be, is the mercy of a higher hand that refuses to let humanity sleepwalk into destruction. Without one final chance to awaken, you were not placed in this generation by accident, nor were you born into this exact time in history by coincidence. Every soul carries within it a divine design, a purpose tailored for the very moment it finds itself in. To believe otherwise is to underestimate both yourself and the author of life. You were created for this moment, and the proof of that lies in the unique combination of gifts, struggles, experiences, and opportunities you carry. Nothing in your life, whether joyful or painful, is wasted. Each detail has been woven together to equip you for the role you are meant to play in this hour of history. It is easy to look at the world and feel overwhelmed by the chaos, confusion, and challenges that surround us. Many wonder why they were born in such a turbulent time. But what if the very reason you are here now is because this generation needs what you carry? The problems of today are not accidents, and neither are the people called to face them. Just as every puzzle has pieces uniquely shaped to fit its gaps, this moment in history requires people shaped for its challenges. That person is you. When you believe you were created for this moment, it changes how you see both yourself and your struggles. Every battle you have faced, every wound you have carried, and every victory you have achieved has been forming you for such a time as this. The pain that once threatened to break you has strengthened you with a resilience that someone else desperately needs to see. The obstacles that once seemed impossible became the training ground for the courage you must now walk in. Nothing in your story is wasted because every thread has been woven into a larger tapestry that speaks of destiny. So many people shrink back because they measure themselves against the size of the problems around them. They think they are too small, too weak, or too insignificant to make a difference. But history is filled with examples of those who rose in their moment despite appearing unqualified or unprepared. The truth is that greatness is not the absence of weakness. It is the decision to stand in the face of it. If you wait until you feel completely ready, you will never move. You were not called to wait for perfect conditions. You were created to step into the storm, to be light in darkness, to be strength in weakness, and to be courage in the face of fear. The belief that you were created for this moment also frees you from comparison. Your role may not look like anyone else's, and it is not meant to. Some are called to speak loudly, others to work quietly, some to stand in public, others to labor in hidden places. But every role is significant because without each one, the larger mission cannot be fulfilled. Just as the body cannot function without each part, the moment we live in cannot be answered without each person taking their place. To underestimate your purpose is to rob the world of something it desperately needs. The weight of this truth also carries responsibility. If you were created for this moment, then to run from it is to deny the very reason you exist. The challenges before you are not meant to crush you, but to call out of you the strength and purpose that were placed inside you from the beginning. The hour is urgent and the stakes are high, but you are not here to simply survive them. You are here to overcome them. The world needs your voice, your strength, your gifts, your courage, and your faith. If you fail to rise, something vital will be missing. When the world is shaking and fear surrounds you, remember that you are not a mistake and you are not powerless. You were placed here intentionally. You carry within you the answer to challenges that others cannot solve. You were created for this moment, and if you will rise to it, you will find that the very reason for your existence will shine brighter than ever before when storms strike and the ground beneath us begins to tremble. The immediate instinct is to believe that destruction is the goal. Yet in the greater picture, the shaking of our lives, our nations, and even the world itself is not meant to destroy, but to awaken and to force a decision that could not be made in comfort. Shaking removes what is false and exposes what is true. It tears down the illusions we build around ourselves, illusions of security, power, or permanence, and compels us to confront what we would otherwise ignore. The shaking is not for the ruin of humanity, but for its redemption, not to erase purpose, but to bring people to the point of choosing who or what they will truly stand upon. When everything appears steady, people can easily drift into complacency. They place their trust in temporary systems, in wealth, in careers, in relationships, or in governments, assuming that these things will always hold. But when those foundations are shaken, the truth is revealed. None of these things are unshakable. This is the mercy of shaking. It reveals what cannot last so that people are not deceived into trusting what will eventually collapse. In this way, shaking serves as a divine alarm clock, breaking through the slumber of false security and forcing hearts to wake up. The purpose is not to harm, but to rescue, not to destroy, but to call forth a decision. Throughout history, every period of shaking has placed people at a crossroads. In times of war, famine, or social upheaval, individuals are forced to decide whether they will cling to fear or rise in faith, whether they will rely on human strength or turn to something higher. The current shaking in our generation is no different. It is placing before us a clear choice: continue trusting in collapsing systems or turn to the foundation that cannot be moved. The shaking removes neutrality. It is no longer possible to sit comfortably in the middle. One must choose, and that choice is the very reason the shaking exists. On a personal level, the same principle is true. Life's trials, losses, and crises often feel like they are designed to break us, but their deeper purpose is to bring us to a decision point. When you face betrayal, will you choose bitterness or forgiveness? When you walk through loss, will you cling to despair or rise in hope? When your dreams collapse, will you give up or seek a greater purpose? Every personal shaking pushes you toward a decision that shapes your future. If all things remain stable, you would never be forced to confront these defining choices. The shaking is not meant to bury you under rubble, but to strip away the false so that you can stand firm on the true. The greatest tragedy is not the shaking itself, but ignoring its call. Many people endure the storms yet fail to learn their lessons. They see the collapse of false securities, yet rush to rebuild on the same fragile foundations. They sense the urgency of the hour, yet refuse to change course. In doing so, they miss the entire purpose of the shaking. It was never meant to simply unsettle. It was meant to redirect, to offer a chance for transformation before it is too late. The shaking of the world is not random chaos. It is the pressing of a higher hand urging humanity to choose. It is the narrowing of options so that neutrality is stripped away and clarity is forced upon every heart. Will you continue trusting what is unstable, or will you turn to the unshakable? Will you live for what is temporary, or will you embrace what is eternal? These are the decisions that shaking demands. Destruction is not the end goal, decision is. The collapse of the false clears the way for the revelation of the true. The shaking is not meant to break you, but to build you on a stronger foundation. It is not for your end, but for your awakening. It is the chance to choose rightly, to stand firmly, and to step into the purpose for which you were created. Compromise and delay may seem harmless in the moment, but they are among the greatest dangers a person can fall into because they quietly steal destiny. Unlike open rebellion or dramatic failure, compromise is subtle. It begins with small concessions, little decisions to settle for less than truth, minor adjustments to blend in with the world, or excuses to avoid uncomfortable obedience. Delay is its twin, whispering that there will always be more time, that tomorrow is the better day to change, that later will be easier than now. Together, compromise and delay form a trap that robs people of the fullness of life they were meant to live. The danger of compromise lies in its ability to erode conviction one decision at a time. No one wakes up one morning and decides to abandon their calling or integrity outright. It happens gradually through countless small choices to bend instead of stand, to silence the truth instead of speak it, to go along instead of resist. Compromise convinces the heart that bending a little is harmless, that it is necessary to keep peace, or that it is the only way to succeed. Yet what begins as a small bend soon becomes a habit of surrender, and a person who once stood strong finds themselves far from the path they were meant to walk. Compromise is dangerous because it does not destroy suddenly, but slowly, making it difficult to see the destruction until it is too late. Delay, on the other hand, operates by creating the illusion of endless opportunity. It tells you that you will pursue your calling tomorrow, that you will make things right with others later, that you will change your life when conditions feel better. Delay masks itself as patience, but in reality, it is often fear or complacency disguised. Every day that passes in delay is a day wasted, a day that could have been used to step into purpose, but was instead surrendered to waiting. The great danger is that tomorrow is never guaranteed. The chance to act that exists today may not exist tomorrow. A door open now may close forever, if not walked through. Delay is dangerous because it assumes control over something no human being possesses: time. Together, compromise and delay rob people of strength, integrity, and destiny. They leave a person weakened, unfulfilled, and filled with regret. Many people at the end of their lives do not regret what they tried and failed at, but what they never attempted because they delayed. They do not grieve the times they stood boldly for truth, but the moments they compromised out of fear of rejection. Regret is the bitter fruit of compromise and delay, and it always tastes worse than the pain of sacrifice or risk. The danger is also magnified because compromise and delay are contagious. When one person compromises, often influences others to do the same, normalizing what once seemed unthinkable. When one person delays, it can create a culture of passivity where urgent action is constantly postponed until it is too late. Families, communities, even entire nations can be weakened because of compromise and delay. The strength of a generation is lost when people refuse to act in their moment. The antidote to compromise and delay is conviction and urgency. Conviction refuses to bend even when the pressure is great, choosing principle over popularity and truth over comfort. Urgency acts today instead of waiting for tomorrow, understanding that every moment counts and every decision matters. To live with conviction and urgency is to live without regret, knowing that no opportunity was wasted and no truth was surrendered. The danger of compromise and delay cannot be overstated, for they are the silent killers of purpose. They rob not with violence, but with subtlety, convincing people that they can afford to give in or to wait just a little longer. But time does not wait, and truth cannot be bent without consequence. To recognize this danger is to awaken to the call to live boldly, to decide firmly, and to act now before the chance is lost forever. Life is full of decisions, but not all choices carry the same weight. Some are temporary, like what to eat or where to travel, while others determine the direction of an entire lifetime. There are also choices that carry eternal significance, decisions that cannot be postponed without great risk. The urgency of those choices lies in the reality that time is fragile and fleeting, and tomorrow is never promised. This is why the call comes clearly and without hesitation. The choice must be made now. Procrastination is one of the greatest illusions that ensnares people. It whispers that there is no need to rush, that more time will always be available, that tomorrow will bring a better opportunity. But tomorrow is not guaranteed, and every delay allows the heart to harden and the window of opportunity to narrow. What feels like a small postponement can become a lifetime of inaction. By the time many awaken to what truly matters, the door of decision has already closed. The weight of lost opportunities and the regret of choices never made hang heavier than the pain of any sacrifice that could have been embraced in the moment. The urgency of choice is not only about the brevity of life, but also about the nature of truth. Truth demands a response. When it is revealed, it cannot be ignored without consequence. To hear truth and put off responding is to silently choose against it. Neutrality is a myth. Silence is already a decision. By refusing to choose, one is in fact making a choice, but often not the one that leads to life. The decision to wait is still a decision, and it almost always leads away from the very destiny a person longs for. There is also a spiritual weight to this urgency. Every generation is given opportunities to turn, to awaken, to rise to the purpose for which they were created. But those moments do not last forever. They are windows that open, calling people to act, and then they close. History is filled with examples of individuals and nations that missed their moment because they assumed they could act later. Once the chance passed, it did not return. To ignore the urgency of now is to gamble with a resource that cannot be replenished. Time once lost is gone forever. The choice must be made now because delay weakens resolve. The longer someone waits to act, the easier it becomes to continue waiting. Habits of postponement sink deeper into the soul, and courage fades with every passing day. Decisions that should be made in strength are often abandoned because of the slow erosion of conviction through delay. Every time you push a choice off into the future, the heart becomes a little more numb, the urgency feels a little less sharp, and the temptation to remain in apathy grows stronger. That is why the wisest people act while the call is fresh. When the fire of conviction still burns, because they know the longer they wait, the harder it will be to act. It is also important to understand that the call to choose is not about fear, but about freedom. To decide now is to break free from the chains of indecision, regret, and hesitation. It is to step into the fullness of life that was always meant for you. The urgency is not meant to crush, but to liberate. It is a summons to rise, to declare with clarity who you are and what you will live for, without being held back by the lies of delay. The opportunity before you today is an invitation to embrace destiny, to make the choice that aligns with truth, purpose, and eternal significance. The danger of waiting is too great, the stakes are too high, and the moment is too short. Every heartbeat is a reminder that life is passing. Every sunrise is a reminder that another day is gone, and every storm in the world is a reminder that history is moving forward swiftly. The choice cannot be delayed because delay itself is a decision, one that leads to loss. To seize the moment is to live without regret, to act while there is still time, and to step into the destiny that awaits those who refuse to postpone. The choice must be made now